is a D6 generation pip. Yeah, one of those dots on the side of a six-sided die. Yeah, a pip. You know, a short pip. Little something. Yeah, about anything gaming related. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ. We'll see what's coming up today.
Bum, 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 bum. I'm back. Sorry.
Ooh, that's very exciting.
It's been a while.
Well, I know the topic for today.
Yes.
So I was listening to your first couple notes there.
Yeah, wrong
and
movie.
I was
Wrong
trying
movie.
to get the theme from the music you were playing.
Yeah,
And then I realized
that ain't
it was a fanfare for your return.
It was indeed.
And it was well deserved and well needed. So we're very excited to have Craig back on the show.
I'm very excited to be back on the show, Russ.
So have you recovered from 2020? Raring to go. Everything's cleared up.
You know, it's a slow rebuilding process, but I'm well on my way, I think.
It's okay. You're with the rest of the world. You're in good company.
Exactly.
We're all rebuilding.
We're all recovering.
You know, it's build back better. That's what they say, right?
Yeah,
so
that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
So,
Edgy.
so here we're back. But we want to get right to it, Craig.
We do.
We just played. Now, as you know, we appreciate all of our listeners staying with us through all these radical changes.
Absolutely.
Excitement. Of course, the D&D is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the craziness. We're hoping to get Craig back onto that action, too.
I'm hoping, too.
Why not? We'll see. But we also know that a lot of you are like, hey, the D&D is great, but what about the board games? What about other games?
That's right.
And interestingly
enough, we have been playing those games.
We have been a little bit here and there. You know, we're trying to maintain social distancing. It's a little harder to go to the gaming store and pick up random games and stuff.
Yeah.
But we did just play a fantastic, hot off the press game that after we played it, we were like, we have to do an episode about this.
Absolutely.
And that game was Dune Imperium.
Yes.
Right?
It was awesome.
Fantastic. Based on the new Dune. Is it a movie coming out? I think it's a movie, right?
I believe it's a
movie. Coming out, the artwork and everything is inspired by the movie, and they have the license. It seems like from the writing on the inside of the rules book, they have license for the new movie plus the books.
Yeah.
So they can pull from any of that stuff.
Fun side game using the game art to try to figure out what actors will be portraying those characters.
Yeah, exactly, because it's drawn art, but you can clearly tell some of the actors are so well known and so iconic, you can get it. So it was fantastic. Now, I have to tell you all a little secret. I got to have Craig play this game.
This was a classic Jedi mind trick.
So here's the thing. This game, I bought it. They didn't ship it to us for a review copy. This is a game I bought. I got onto it right shortly after the Kickstarter was over, but it was on their website. So I ordered it, I want to say November-ish, and I just got it like over Christmas. And so I had it. And I was like, oh my God, this looks so good. The art's great. Craig loves Dune. Mm-hmm. But in reading about it, I knew it was a deck builder. And it had
lose me on deck builder.
It's deck builder worker placement, which are two of the things that Craig is not always a huge fan of.
Bizarre.
Because he doesn't like having more options or more needs than decisions.
I just don't like it. I don't like it.
So I was like, man, I know Craig likes
like
Dune.
Real life.
So I decided to not tell Craig anything about the mechanics of the game.
No, he did not.
All I said was, Craig, I got the new version of the Dune game, and it's I think it captures the theme great, but it doesn't. It's not the same as the old Dune game, meaning you can play it in a sitting. It doesn't take all day, and it's not super complicated.
Right.
Nothing against that old game. I'm just saying it's different. So Craig agreed without trepidation. Even.
No, I was excited to do it.
And we got a couple of our friends actually.
Raef, and your brother,
and my brother John.
I haven't played a game with either of them in probably a year or more.
Who listeners will both recognize from the D&D podcast side of things. So it was great to have everybody sitting down. It is a 4-player game, so we played with all 4 players, which was fun.
Yep.
And so one of the things I wanted to talk about this game, and I think this is going to require Craig to give us some classic, gallant backstory here, is that the game, and I think when I described the rules, I actually positioned it this way, the game, because I didn't want to say to Craig, hey, Craig, this is a deck builder. So
worker placement deck builder.
Worker placement deck builder with a Dune theme tacked on. So instead, I laid the board out and I said, look, Craig, on this side are all the major guilds that you can do action with. Like there's the Space Guild, and there's the Fremen, and there's all the different factions that you have to seek tribute with. And Craig's like,
with beautiful
"Ooh."
artwork.
And then I'm like, over here, there's always battles in Dune, right, Craig? Over here is the giant battlefield where
look
each
at
round
that.
you will have wars. So Craig,
there's the Landstrad.
So I kind of knew what to say to get Craig sort of drawn into the fact that the guys who made this game knew Dune.
Basically, what he's saying is that because I have become immune to his standard Jedi mind tricks, he wove a full-on Jedi mind spell.
That's right. Well, Luke's leveled up.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
So anyway, Craig, for listeners who maybe aren't super familiar with the Dune universe, give us a little backstory.
Okay.
Don't give us the entire Frank Herbert canon thing here, but like, if someone were to say to you, distill the essence of Dune down, like what would the game about Dune have to have in it to make it feel like Dune? What is Dune to you, Craig?
Well, it's all about intrigue, right? Yeah. It's all about intrigue and espionage and betrayal. Oh, yes. So very, very briefly, the universe or the galaxy, or I can't really remember the scope, but there's an emperor of all of the known universe.
Right.
And he's not really very powerful. He's kind of a figurehead, sort of, and the nobles and all the different guilds and all the different factions sort of divide power amongst themselves. And yet at the same time, he does have power to sort of dispense favors and things like that. And so the two houses at the center of the story are the Harkonnen, who run this planet called Arrakis, which is nicknamed Dune, which is the only place in the universe you can get this stuff called melange, which is also known as spice, which can prolong your life indefinitely. It can do all kinds of other amazing things. It's the only way you can travel faster than time, because the Navigators Guild has to use it in order to see ahead into the future so that you can travel. And so it's it's the most important, powerful, expensive, valuable thing in the entire universe. And the Harkonnen are running it like a slave outpost, and they're working the people to death. It's a very dangerous thing to mine, because there's these giant worms that come up and kill you while you're mining it.
It's a desert planet, we should say.
It's a desert planet.
Yes.
Thus Dune.
Filled with these giant worms that can eat an entire, legion of people. Yeah.
And then into this, you have this other family, the Atreides, who are a very old noble house that rule this nice, fancy water planet where you can go boating and whatnot. And then there's this whole intrigue that begins that's going to bring down you can.
Atreides,
Paul Atreides has a boat. He does have a boat.
He does have a boat.
And so it's this whole big giant scheme that gets woven all together. And among that, you have the Bene Gesserit, who is this religious pseudo-mystical order that can do all kinds of weird witches. Fear is the mind killer. You've got the Fremen, who are the nomadic people of Arrakis, of Dune. You need their help if you're going to get the spice, because they're the ones who live out in the deserts. You have the Spacing Guild. They're the ones who can get you from point A to point B. You have the court of the Emperor, where all the intrigue begins. So you've got all of these minor factions, and then you have these two houses that are sort of being pitted against each other by the Emperor, and who is going to come out on top? Who is going to rule Dune, that planet Arrakis, in the end? And that's the book, that's the story, and that's the game.
Yeah, there you go. Now you nailed it. So when we started to play this game and start to lay it out, I figured, and a couple things about it too, but there's always a lot of combat going on. There's a lot of war in the factions. Harkonnen particularly has these stormtrooper guys. They're very militant. But then meanwhile, there's all the political intrigue Craig's talking about, and the assassinating and backstabbing, everything. Assassinating, yeah, it's a verb. So I wanted to make sure I captured that, and I wanted to lure Craig in. So Craig, when you first saw this thing laid out, because I'd set it up before Craig showed up and had it all ready to go.
Yeah, you did.
Also, a pro tip, you don't want your players, when they're playing a game for the first time, to have to wait for setup. So anything you do it ahead of time, you got to make it easier for the players. Always a good tip.
Yep.
So what did you think when you first saw it, Craig? Because it probably didn't take you too long to start smelling deck builder and worker placement.
No.
So where was your confidence level?
The first thing I noticed was cubes.
Yes, yeah.
And then I thought, there's cubes. Oh, there's places for the cubes on the board. I'm going to be placing cubes. Oh, wait, there's agents, these little things. It is very reminiscent to me of Lords of Waterdeep,
Yeah, it definitely got to. In fact, my brother also mentioned this, who's not a hardcore gamer, but he's played a lot of Lords of Waterdeep. About halfway through the game, he goes, "This is awesome. It's like Lords of Waterdeep and Dune." So if you're a Lords of Waterdeep fan, you're already halfway there.
Yeah, because it has that concept where you've got the agents and you're putting your guys out there. Instead of Lords of Waterdeep, where you automatically get your extra guy,
right?
In Dune, you actually have to build an engine at some point that's big enough to buy your...
To get your sword master.
You need a sword master.
You need a sword master.
You need to get
Everybody
through
on
those
Arrakis.
shields, Russ.
You need those shields.
Okay. No, you need to get through the shield.
That too.
Everybody's got shields.
Well, that's right.
And so when I saw the cards laid out, I didn't think anything of it. But as I was looking, the board is beautiful. It's a little abstract. It's a little, it's very icon driven.
Yes.
But the icons are great. They're very clear. Once you understand, okay, that icon is the Fremen, or that icon means this type of location, and that icon means that type of location, and it's all tied to the book. It's all tied to the book. You've got the Landstrad, which is kind of like the House of Representatives, where people can bloviate all day long, and you can bloviate. I believe there's a place called Bloviate. Oh no, it's called Great Oratory or something.
right.
Same thing.
Which is bloviating.
Exactly. And so I started to notice all of that. Then I noticed all of, like Russ said, along the side of the board are the 4 major kind of secondary factions, or not so much secondary, but background factions.
Yeah, they're not
to
the
this
main
overall
houses in the story. So think of Game of Thrones, where there's the main houses you kind of follow along.
Yeah.
And then there's these secondary factions that are really important, like the Space Guild and everything. That's great.
Right,
Sorry,
exactly. There are no space guilds in Game of Thrones. But anyway...
yes,
that was a little confusing.
I'm sorry.
And so I loved it. It looked really cool. It was engaging. The art that really, really makes it come alive is in the cards and in the player mats. The player mats have all of your rules on it. Each faction has sort of a basic ruler, a basic leader, and a more difficult to play like sort of second tier, or I would say second and first, whichever direction you want to go.
Sure.
But one is more powerful but more complex than the other. And of course, I played Harkonnen, so of course they have the Beast Raban, who is this big brutish bad guy, and then they have Baron Harkonnen, the big well, let's say big boned. He's big boned. Yeah. He's so big boned that he has to have like anti-gravity generators on his suits so he can float around, so he doesn't have to bear his own weight. And so I don't know how the Baron works. I do know that that the Beast Raban is very powerful.
Yes, he is.
And has a really cool. Everybody has 2 cool powers. Well, maybe get into the mechanics of that later, but it's really, one is keyed off of a specific card you play every now and then, and one is keyed off of just something that you can do at some point in the game.
Right.
Beast Raban's is at setup. He can do something. Paul Atreides is allowed to, at any time he wants, to look at the top deck of his top card of his deck.
Right.
So everybody's got these little abilities that kind of give them some flavor, and there's a justification, an in-story justification for all of the little rules. And every one of us, I think, in our heads was going, well, mine's not very powerful. It's not as powerful as his. And then after we played the game, we were all like, well, mine's not as powerful as yours. Well, mine doesn't work the way you thought it worked. It actually only did this. And we realized that these powers are only little minor flavor things, but because they tied in with the fluff so well, it really just gave yet another dimension to the characters, which was great. So
let's get into those mechanics a little bit. The flavor's definitely there, and you're seeing it all. And then the next part about the game that works really well is that the mechanics, again, support the flavor. So basically how the game functions, and we won't go into the super detailed version, but is that you're at its core, it is deck builder worker placement. So you start with a predetermined deck of cards that is basically the same as everyone, like most classic deck builders, right? And what's interesting about these cards is that they serve 2 functions.
I love multi-purpose pieces.
This is really interesting. So you get your hand of cards, and the first thing you're going to do is we're going to go around the table and we're going to place workers. And each player is going to go and place their first worker.
Can we just say agent?
Agents, yes. We're going to place our agents.
It takes it so far removed from a word. It's an agent.
It's an agent
game.
So we're going to
way cooler.
We're going to send one of our sneaky agents in to do some kind of thing
Yep.
down, or not necessarily on Arrakis, because there's different spaces you can go to.
Yep.
Now, some of these spaces where you can place your worker are in some of those other factions and
Or
guilds
agent.
that agents you can play are in some of those faction and guild areas, like
Yep.
sort of on the side of the board. And when you go there, not only do you get to do whatever the space says,
Yeah.
but you gain influence with that faction.
Exactly.
And there's little influence tracks for that. And getting higher on that influence gives you victory points. So we should say we broke one of our D6G rules, which is always
how do you win?
How do you win? The game is a victory point based game.
Yep.
And there are a wide variety of things you can do in the game to get victory points. And much like other great board games with good graphic design, there's a simple icon that represents victory points that you see all over the place.
Yep.
So you know, well, if I go there, I'll get a victory point. Or if I get past this point on the track, I'll get a victory point, or
Or if
whatever.
I use this card and the way it says I get a victory point.
This card gives you a victory point, exactly. So it's very clear to you. It doesn't take very long to figure out the kind of things you want to do.
Yep.
There's not a lot of hidden victory point generation going on. So you're going to want to put your guys down, obviously, to get certain resources. You can go to different places on the board to different things.
What are those resources, Russ?
Well, the primary resources in the game, there's actually a couple, and there's another one. It wouldn't be a Dune game without spice.
No, you need the spice melange.
Spice, and again, the components, Craig described them earlier, really nice wooden components for the spice.
The spice is orange octagons.
Yes. There's also money, Craig. What's money called?
The money is called solari.
Solari, right, which is basically your cash, right? And then
Silver circles.
silver circles. And then the other big resource is your troops.
Well, your water.
You're right. Water,
You
right.
can't go on to Arrakis without water.
Yeah, good point, Craig. I missed water completely. And water, of course, is another key
water drop
part of Dune.
Of the whole story.
Some of the spaces on the planet generate resources.
Yep.
But the iconography on the spaces is such that some of them also cost resources to go there.
Yep.
But the innovative mechanic, Craig.
Yes, one of many.
One of many innovative mechanics. Unlike most worker placement games.
Agent placement.
In this agent placement game.
Oh, I see what you did there.
You can't just pick where you want your agent to go as long as you have the resources to spend it. No, you actually have to play the appropriate card.
Yeah.
So you're going to look in your hand, and the card's going to have some cool artwork and fluff on it.
Yep.
Maybe I'm trying to remember one of the ones, but there's one called Arrakis Desert or something, and it's got a little rover, exploring rover or something, right? And the idea, and on the side of that card are little icons that match different icons on the spaces of the board.
Yep.
So different cards you play, you put the card down face up in front of the rest of the players, and you're saying, I'm playing this card, and you can now place your agent in any space that has an icon that matches the symbols of that
Basically,
card.
it unlocks regions of the board.
So the fluff is by playing a certain cool sort of action card, it's enabling your agent to go to a certain place.
Yeah, and they're all thematically connected.
Maybe you got like a teleporter to send your guy to the thing or whatever, right? They're all really cool, and they match what exactly is happening, right? And so you can put your guy in the right location. Now, again, when you put your person in that location, you have to have the right card, and you have to have the right resources to spend immediately, and then you get to take whatever iconography actions are on that space.
Yep.
Right? Sometimes it increases your influence. Sometimes, for example, you can go into the desert and get some spice.
Yep.
From the worms, you can go to get some money. You can go spend some money.
Cards in your hand.
Cards for your hand. Whatever kind of things you want to do. And everything you can pretty much do in the game is in one of those spaces.
Yeah.
And some of the spaces include iconography that allow you to deploy your troops to their garrison and then move them from the garrison to this main battlefield. So what's interesting about fighting in Dune, which is really fascinating, is it's not like area control where there's different regions on the planet like the original Dune game and you're moving men around.
It's abstracted.
It's very abstracted. So
quite often it's tied to locations, which I thought was great too.
It is really cool because at the beginning of each round, you're going to flip over this card on the combat deck, and that's going to tell you where the fight is happening this round.
Yep.
And it's also going to tell you the prizes worth getting if you commit troops, and how well you win the battle will dictate what kind of prizes you get.
Yep.
And often it's capturing certain spaces on the board, which when people use them in the future generates resources for you. So all kinds of cool things like that. But also some of the biggest prizes in the game come out of those combats. And the way the combat deck is built, you're pulling from different kinds of combat cards. There's a very specific way to build the deck. So the game is designed to reach a crescendo where the battles become more and more impactful.
Impactful is a great way to put it.
And the combat deck is also the game's timer.
Yes.
So the game ends under two scenarios. One, the combat deck runs out, in which case you finish your turn and you check your victory points. Or any player gets above 10 victory points.
10 or more, right?
Yeah, 10 or more, in which case you finish the turn, you finally totally get up, and then the highest score wins.
And it doesn't take that long to get to 10.
No.
Especially with the battles. Towards the end, the battles are giving the victor of the battle 2 victory points for that one battle.
So now what's interesting is the card, though, that you're playing also has another big function.
Yes.
And this is where it gets really interesting. So you go around the table, each player's playing one card, and then by playing that card, you get a couple things. One, as I mentioned before, there's icons in the card that tell you where you're authorized to put one of your agents.
Excellent.
But there's also a little gray band in the middle of the card, which might activate secondary things that happen as soon as you move your agent. So it might be, it generates some water, or maybe, I don't know.
If you've, I was building with the Bene Gesserit at one point, and I had several Bene Gesserit cards in my hand, and I had one that every time I managed to put a Bene Gesserit, I used a specific card, but had already revealed another Bene Gesserit card. My influence with the Bene Gesserit went up 1. So that's just one example. Raef had one where when he played that card, if he had done certain things in that turn before that and paid some heaping giant amount of spice, he could literally get a victory point every time he played that card. So, and those are, like Russ said, those are in this little gray band. It's not alternative, but it's additional effects beyond placement of the agent that card can have.
Which is awesome. And then there's a third section of the card, though, and this is another super innovative mechanic.
It's great.
There's a third section of the card which you ignore if you're using the card to place an agent, right? So the card's got the secondary ability, but this is really fascinating because after we've all gone around the table and we've each played a card once and put our agent down there, we all go around the table again and we each place another agent.
Yep.
But during your turn, you actually have 2 choices. You can play a card and place an agent, or you can choose to do what's called revealing.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you reveal, you do the results of that, and then you're not going to be able to play any more this round.
You're done with your agents.
But you can reveal before you've placed all your agents if you want to, and this will make sense in a second. But basically what commonly happens in the first couple rounds of the game when you're learning it, everybody's going to go around, place agent 1, everybody's going to go around, place agent 2, spending a card each. And once all your agents are placed, because you don't get the third agent until later in the game, each player is going to go around and do that reveal step.
Yeah.
Now, when you reveal, any card you didn't play, and remember you've got a hand of, I believe it's 5 cards.
It starts with 5.
So you've got a hand of 5 cards. Because you've used 2 cards from your hand to play 2 different agents, you've still got 3 cards left in your hand.
Or more, if depending on what you've had your agents
you could have more than 3 because some of the places allow you to draw extra cards. Some of the special powers generate extra cards, things like that to draw, right? So whatever's left in your hand then gets revealed. But when you reveal those cards, you only look at the bottom portion of the card.
And you get everything at the bottom.
Now, most of the time, the stuff at the bottom is what they call, it's not called influence. It's called, maybe it is influence, but it's politics, popularity, like persuasion.
Persuasion.
It's called persuasion. Now, persuasion is I'm going to call it, it's an instantaneous currency or instantaneous resource because there's no tokens for it. It's just like a classic deck building game. You count up your persuasion, and then there's also a market of cards off to the side of the board that are all the current cards you can buy to add to your deck of cards.
Right.
And these are more of the cards that you just played. So they've got cooler pictures on them, but of course, like most deck building games, your starting deck doesn't have very powerful cards in it, but there's all kinds of cool cards in the market.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to use so one of the tough decisions you have to make is if you reveal early, like before you've placed any agents or 2 agents, you've got an extra card now to take advantage of whatever's in the bottom of it. Or you're going to be torn between, I've got this perfect card to place the agent where I want with a cool bonus ability, but the bottom of the card, if I use it for a reveal, that's also really good. And now, do I really need to buy more cards right now, or am I better off just moving my agent where I want to go?
And sometimes in the market, you'll see a card that you really, really want that might complement other cards you have, or is just crazy powerful. Russ secured the services of sandworms.
I did.
And that cost a lot, right?
It did. It was very expensive. It was like 8 persuasion. I happen to have a lot of persuasion one round.
And what you'll see is either somebody will have a good hand of cards right off at the beginning, and they really want that card, and they don't want it because of the turn order. The player turn order this round, they're not going to be able to get it, so they reveal early to snag it. Or you're going to see like Russ just happened, like he built up this hand one turn and it was a bunch of cards that like didn't do much for him, but had a lot of persuasion.
Yep.
And there's also other places on the board where you can mine persuasion basically.
Yep.
And he had done all of that and he was like, here we go, baby. And it was just like the big reveal and he had 8. He's like, the sandworms are mine. And the sandworms give a huge bonus in combat. So that's why you might reveal early.
Now, the other part about revealing, though, so the second part of what's on those reveal cards section of your cards, there's really 2 things. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that can be down there, but the 2 things you commonly see is either persuasion. I really like the word of that because most of the cards you're bringing into your deck are either faction members or actual named characters from the books.
Yeah.
So what you're really getting is it does feel like you're persuading them to join your cause.
Yeah.
And what's neat is the factions that you can persuade in the books often served multiple houses.
Yeah.
So it's not weird to see the Benny Jesuits, and Craig, you had a great story about
Benny
this.
Jesuit?
Benny Jesuit, sorry.
The Benny Jesuit.
That's a different thing. Apologies, everybody I offended out there.
That's right, it's okay.
But you mentioned that at one point, they were serving tell the story you're telling me at dinner.
Well, when we were playing, I was in a great position to win, I think a turn earlier than I actually won, because the Harkonnen in the story are just brutal and the Fremen hate them. And I was playing early. I kept landing on the Fremen and I kept just like goading them a little bit and pushing my influence up. So the way the influence track works is once you get to the top 3 tiers of the influence track for each secondary faction, you now have an alliance with them and you have a victory point. But that victory point is transient. If someone can climb that influence ladder, get ahead of you, then they take that token from you. And I was all the way up. I was at the top of the ladder except 1. So I was 1 spot away from the top. And I figured, okay, now I'm secure in that and I'll start working some other stuff. So I was working the Benny Gesserit and I had some other things working and I had a really good hand of cards. And then right before the reveal, which happens right before the battle, there's one battle every full turn. John played like this. He was like, bam, bam, bam. And he had like 3 cards and he revealed first. And it was like, oh, I go down in 1 influence. I go up in 2. And it was like, by the time he was done, he had stolen the Fremen from me, which took away the card from me, which is just like, it's those wacky Atreides. He was playing the Atreides and he came in and he was like, his name's
a killing word.
He was like, nice. His name is a killing word. The weirding way. Okay. Anyway, he came in and he was like, what, you fool Fremen, can't you see that the Harkonnen are using you? And convinced them to leave me and abandon me, and my score went down so that when I won the battle that I had spent that entire turn building myself up to a completely unassailable position. There was no way anybody could touch me. I was going to get 2 victory points for this battle. It was going to secure my victory. It was going to get me just to 10. I was the 4th player that turn, so nobody was going to go after me. And John just stole the Fremen.
It was great.
And I ended up with a 9 at the end of that turn.
It was awesome. It was very Dune.
It was crazy. It was very Dune.
And that's the trick. The combat's a huge factor in the game. And this is where the other big part of the reveal. So when you reveal your cards, again, you're getting all that persuasion to pick new cards, but oftentimes there's also icons down there that look like little swords, right? And these swords add to your combat value in the combat round that's about to happen. So fighting doesn't happen like continually in the game. What actually happens is during the round where you're deploying agents and then you're doing a reveal, that's some of those actions you're doing on the table are putting more and more of your little soldier cubes into the combat situation, right? Yeah. And because there's certain values on that combat card, you kind of know what you're fighting for. As Craig mentioned earlier, in this particular story he described, he was fighting for victory points.
Yep.
Now, after all the cards are revealed and everybody's done, then you're going to go resolve combat. What's interesting is when I reveal my cards, going into the reveal phase, we kind of know where the battle stands at the moment.
Because you have had to already put your cubes in there.
Right. So we kind of see all the cubes in there and we kind of know what's going on. And each cube is worth 2 combat points. And there's actually a little track below sort of the battle area where you put one of your colored cubes on and each player is then tracked to the current rank. So you've calculated this all out and you kind of see what the track is. But then as I reveal these cards, some of them might have these crossed swords.
Yep.
And it's enough, and each crossed sword moves it up 1.
Yeah.
So your troops are worth double the swords on the cards. But some of the cards, like giant sandworms, if you have enough influence with the Atreides faction.
With the Fremen.
The Fremen, sorry, yeah.
Yep.
If you have it with the Fremen, the giant sandworms, when you play this card, can be worth 4 or sometimes 8 swords. Which is a huge swing.
Yeah.
So that's how both John and I were able to kind of make these huge moments in the game, which was really fun and fluffy because it's exactly how the sandworms worked.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And it really made that sort of combat round a very cool feeling, and it felt like a real battle, and you couldn't always predict it.
No, and it's neat because the battle, you know what you're fighting for, and you know whether you're going to need it or not. And early on in the game, it's all there. Most of them are skirmishes or supply raids, and you can say, well, do I really want to put that much of my effort into putting all those cubes out there? And we should also mention, especially if you go through the is it the Bene Gesserit?
Yes.
The Bene Gesserit give you these intrigue cards. There are other ways to get them as well, like if you go to the Emperor's Court, and they range from foolish and ridiculous and completely won't have any impact on the game to, oh my God, you just moved all of your cubes out of your garrison into the battle, and I thought I was all alone, and now you have taken everything.
Right.
So it's like, and in my opinion, or in my experience, I had a bunch of them at one point. Far more of them are really cool, neat things than a couple of the ones that I got later on in the game that I was like, well, that's not going to be of any use. But I had one that was literally, it's very hard to move your soldiers out of the barracks and into the battle if you build up a bunch in your barracks. And the barracks is the only place where they can last from one turn to the next. Everybody that's out in the battle, they're gone at the end of the battle, win or lose. So you build up in your barracks, and then it's very difficult to kind of get them out. You can only get them out 2 at a time, really, by any of the mechanics on the board. But I got this card that was push as many guys as you want out onto the battlefield, and I had stored up a bunch from that last battle, and I was able to do that, and it was a really cool added little moment in the game where the battlefield was suddenly flooded with Harkonnen soldiers. And
I think that's the key. I think those intrigue cards you mentioned, they do a lot of interesting things. And one of my tips to any new players who play this game is go for the intrigue cards. Because I think initially, you don't look through the deck probably. You're just looking at things. And there are some spaces that generate intrigue cards, and they don't do much more than that. And they kind of cost a lot. And you're kind of like, I don't know. But then things will happen. And there's a couple cards in the game that when you play them, you get an intrigue card. And all of a sudden, people start playing these things. You're like, oh,
I need those.
And what's cool about them is it removes the perfect knowledge from the battlefield.
Absolutely.
I think there's no longer perfect knowledge because you don't really know exactly what's going on. And it removes the perfect knowledge not only from the combat part and not only from what can happen, but also at the end game, because some of these intrigue cards are end game intrigue cards that you play then. And they're sort of like different things. If you got the right number of influence of certain factions, you get bonus points or other factors that can really throw a wrench into your plans. And it really makes it feel very... intrigue's a perfect word. It feels very Dune.
Yes.
It feels very like, you got me. Oh, you backstab me. Exactly. See, Jinx.
Yep. I said backstab E. Okay. I think you said backstab me. Fine. Is that what you said?
I thought I said E.
Maybe I said me.
Maybe you said me.
I don't know.
So anyway, those are the primary mechanics. So that's pretty much the game.
Yeah. Oh, and so Russ gave one piece of advice, so I'm going to give one piece of advice. When you're calculating how many combat points you're going to need to win, don't forget those intrigue cards. Right,
Russ?
Yes. Right, Russ?
Yes,
don't forget your
opponent. I may have played some so the intrigue cards, there's the ones you play during your turn, just sort of at time to give you boosts.
Yep.
There's the end game ones. There's the end game ones you save for the end to kind of reveal to surprise people with your victory points. But then there's combat intrigue cards, which you play during combat that surprise folks like
ambush. Add 4 swords to your count.
Yes.
And so when I looked at it, and I had a card where I could pull back into my garrison as many as I wanted, and I did the math quick, and I was like, oh, I've got Russ beaten, no problem. And I scooped it, and I said, okay, I'm done. And as soon as Raef started his turn, I looked over and saw Russ looking at me with a little Russ grin from over his hand of intrigue cards, and I went, damn it!
Yes, I may have spoiled that round.
Yes.
So I think all 4 players, John, Raef, and us both really had a great time with this game.
We absolutely did.
Can't recommend it highly enough. My only critique would be that we did run short of resource components.
Yeah.
A couple of them, there's just not quite enough for a 4-player game. So we just had substitutions. I just grabbed a couple of tokens I had lying around. But that's my only critique. Otherwise, I think it's a really
I loved it.
fantastic. So Craig.
Yes.
In the style.
Oh, no.
In the style of a Bene Gesserit.
Jesuit.
Yes, that's the one. Who pronounces her name correctly and is describing the weirding way. Oh. Please explain the patented D6G rating system. At this point, it's got to be patented.
It's got to be. It's a common law patent.
Right.
I'm confused. I'm describing the D6 rating system and the weirding way.
Yes. In terms a weirder would understand.
Well, in that case, first of all, do not fear the weirding way, because fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death. And that's all that I know about that part. So I'm going to just move on. So the weirding way is where you use your voice as your power and your offensive capability. You can attack and destroy your enemies with your voice alone. And so let's rate, for instance, Russ using the weirding way. Russ would be a 6, which sounds great, but that means that on a D6, if you roll it, he'll only hurt you on a 6, right? And let's say who has a big booming... I have a pretty big booming voice. Let's say I'm using it. I could give myself a 2, which means I would wound you on a 2+. So a 2+ is good and a 6 is bad. And because we're so bad at math, or I'm bad at math, and Russ is a good friend who pretends he's bad at math, just for my sake, let's say that we can say a reroll instead of a half. So you could have 2 with a reroll would be really crazy good, right? It would be like 1.5 versus 6 with a reroll, which would be really bad. It would be like 6.5, where, remember, 6 is bad and 2 is good.
Excellent there, Craig.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. But again, just to make it simple, it's the chance in our D6 roll that you'll enjoy the game. So, Craig,
yes.
Why don't you go first? How would you rate Dune Imperium?
I've been away so long, I want to make a million different special secondary rules, but I'm not gonna.
I like it.
You know what? I'm gonna say 3+, unless you are a fan of Dune or agent placement games, or deck builders.
Yeah.
In which case, it's got to be a 2+.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I think one of the interesting things is my brother's not like a huge board gamer nerd. I mean, he loves board games, so play any game you get in front of him. But like he's not super into them. So the fact that he was into it instantly and was like, this is just like Waterdeep, which is another one of his favorites, says a lot. And I think you're right on the money, Craig. I think this game's going to appeal to board game fans who enjoy deck builders and who enjoy worker placement. Yeah. There's a lot to like here and some nice innovation. They're not just cashing in on the license, which I really like.
Absolutely not.
But I think as a Dune fan, who, whether or not you are a deck builder fan or not, and you're a great example of this, these style of games don't normally appeal to you. Here you are loving it and think it would appeal to any of your other, sci-fi friends who know Dune and maybe whether or not they're a worker placement game. So I think it's got it all going on. I'm going to give it a 3+ with a reroll, Craig.
Ooh, so
and a little extra boost.
So I think you got a 2 to 3 and a 2.5. There's basically what you get. So
yeah, that's
a really solid rating.
That's a solid game. Go
I think it is. I think it's got a lot of merit both in its theme.
Yeah,
and that's why I think you will love it if you love Dune. And it's got a lot of merit in its mechanics, and that's why you'll love it if you like those kinds of games.
I need to give one more prop, because I would say not only is the art great on all the cards, I love the art style, I love the how they did it, but one extra bonus thing on the rule book, and I don't think I showed you this, Craig, on the inside cover of the rule book, it even says this first page, you can ignore it, it's just all theme.
Oh, really?
And they show the game board, and they explain the factions of Doom by highlighting elements of the game board.
Oh, nice.
Which is really cool because it shows the theme in the board and the story all at once.
Yeah.
So it's clear that the authors of this game, the designers, everybody involved, fantastic fans of Doom. Yeah. There's no doubt about that.
There's
no doubt about it. And they caught it in the more than once, if you know Dune well, when the mechanics happen and the bonuses on the cards, you're going to be like, that picture just makes me feel that's right.
Yep.
You don't even have to know the icon almost. It's like, this is how this should work. Oh,
the fact that guy allows me to do this thing is awesome.
This should be awesome in combat, but I couldn't possibly be awesome in combat with a worm unless the Fremen like me. Yeah. Oh, look, I have to have a relationship with the Fremen for this to work.
Yep.
It's just got it all in there. It makes total sense. Fantastic. If you're a Dune fan, if you're a Dune fan, I'm going to give it 2+ the reroll.
That's what. Oh, with a reroll.
Yeah, it doesn't get any higher than that.
It does not get any higher than that.
Well, because the original. Look, most of us have very fond memories of the original Dune game. Mm-hmm. But let's be very honest. Very honest. It's a game of its time.
Yeah.
Games are generally not that complex and that long. Right. Yeah. And quite frankly, there are elements to it that are, not maybe
clunky. If
you're going to redo it today, you might do it a little differently. Mm-hmm. This game captures the theme of Dune, the politics, the intrigue. It plays very fast. It's very tight.
Yep.
It's got modern mechanics, great art. What's not to love? What's not to love?
There's nothing not to love.
And there you have it.
There you go.
Dune Imperium.
We're back, baby!
Is your character not as agile as you would like?
Karluk looks at Euphemia and says, I really wish he would have missed, and then just falls over.
Is DM's grace in short supply?
Oh, and the candles go out on the Minotaur's horns.
Is compassion not your character's strong suit?
Minotaur more like beef or more like cannibalism? I'm asking for a friend.
Not wise enough to remember the plot?
Euphemia asks Bear Brother, why are we even here?
Is persuasion your dump stat?
Be prepared for a caster. These do not move on their own.
There's no caster here.
Listen long enough, and you too might learn how to roleplay 8 charisma.
Hey, welcome back. And this time, last time we did this, Raef, you wanted to call it DM's Academy. Mm-hmm. And then you interviewed me. You know what I don't think we've ever done on this show is that I've never actually interviewed you. So
that's true. I don't think that's ever happened.
It's going to happen. I'm going to interview you in another DM's Academy, but this one's sort of like Player Academy.
Yes.
By the way, we creatively spell Academy with 2 A's, 3 A's. Actually, I misspelled it when I posted. My daughter came down this morning. She goes, Dad, did you post something in the D6G feed? Because she's been listening to the D&D stuff. I'm like, yeah. She goes, you spelled Academy with too many A's. So I missed the E. So I fixed that. So it's now Academy.
Oh, you don't mean AAA Academy. You mean,
no, I mean like Academy, and then the second vowel was an A, and then the third vowel was an A. Now the vowel on the end was a Y, so I got that one right. But otherwise, it was a mess.
Well,
anyway,
we're definitely going to have to name it that way from this point forward.
But now I feel like it's AAA Academy is what it is. It's better. It's that much better than most academies because there's extra A's earned when you listen to our academies. But this is more like a player academy, right? Right. So I want to ask you a little bit about your character that you're playing in the campaign now, Euphemia.
Yes.
Who is a female halfling. Now, I'm sure there's many things you want to share with the listeners about this character.
I do.
I seem to be really enjoying the character, but I want to ask you about that in a second. Okay. But the first thing that was sort of interesting to me about this was when this thing started and we didn't know it was going to be a one-off or something interesting. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but I didn't let any of the characters create their characters. So
right.
This figured to be a one-off one night. So we grabbed the pre-gen characters that came in the Lost Mines of Phandalin, pre-made adventure, and I assigned them, or you guys kind of picked them, right? I kind of said, hey, there's an elf, there's a halfling, there's a dwarf, who wants to be what?
That's right.
And you got Euphemia, and all I really gave you was sort of the stuff in the core notes plus a couple extra little tweaks, and that was it. So what did you, first of all, when you're assigned a character like that, how did you feel about that? I mean, a lot of players say that creating the characters is a lot of the fun. How did you feel about getting assigned a character?
I felt great because, again, you're right. In the beginning of my role-playing days, I loved just creating characters. That was fun in and of itself. And anybody listening to the sound of my voice, have your parents or parents buy your kids a player's handbook, get the old hardbound copy, get them a set of dice, and they can create characters by walking through the steps. The player's handbook goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But now, after meeting 100 gajillion, I don't need the joy of picking the roles and the stats and the bonuses and the whatever. I'm more interested in what's the flavor of this character? How's this character think? What are they going to do? What are they going to say? How are they going to interact? So I was able to spend my time thinking about that, including the name. I don't think it came pre-named Euphemia, right? Did I pick that name? I can't remember.
I think part of it was pre-made and part of it wasn't. So it was a halfling, and there was sort of like this. The aunt's name was pre-made, but
the aunt's name was, yeah,
and yeah, some people's names are pre-made. I think Euphemia's name might have been pre-named, but I think you twisted it a little bit. So, what did you?
I think I think it had a name. The character had a name, and all I did was I either looked in the player's handbook under halfling names, or somewhat. My point to all this people listening is I don't remember, but I just went to a name generator. That's all. I went to a name generator. I scrolled, and I like to type it in. This is part of my character creation, okay? Because the name has to grab you, the player. And I typed it in, and I'm like, I don't like that one. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it reads. And I typed the next one in, and I typed the next one in, and then Euphemia stuck. And so and then I give my characters a last name, but I almost never use them. And I would encourage you, don't worry about the last name as much, although some players do a really good job of being like, I am blah, 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 the Duke of blah, 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 blah. Like, I think that's really cool. So I guess what I'm getting at is rule number one of creating fluff to your character, and I'm going to explain fluff, is to pick a name that intrigues you and interests you, is easy to say. It can be weirdly spelled, but if it's easy to say, that's critical, because one of the things that creates role-playing to be fun is getting the other characters to say your character's name. So that's why you want it easy to say. Rather than, hey, Raef, go over here. Hey, Raef, go climb the tree. You want it to be Euphemia climbs the tree or whatever.
Yeah, I think I did assign most of the names because Karluk's name was not Cowlick, which most of the party members have transformed it to, which is pretty funny.
Which is pretty funny.
Doc was stuck with that name. Like he didn't get to pick his name. So I think most of the characters were all pre-made.
I think so.
Pre-made in them. So you got this pre-assigned thing, and then how did you make it your own though? How early in the process were you like, well, I want my halfling to be this way?
Yep. Great question. Step one was, and this was part of the pre-gen. And again, the player's handbook, anybody who's brand new to this walks you through it. It has you pick, I don't remember the official names, personality, traits, and then what I call an off trait or a bad trait. So the player's handbook will say things like swears prodigiously, or will pickpocket little trinkets that are worth no value, or those little hooks help a player get into their character of what they're like. And the way I like to do them is I don't like to pick them. So Russ, my character came with them. So that started to describe what she was like. And so like one of hers is she views her friends as family. Her friends are her family. Anything that's going to protect the friends, she will do. That's one of hers that I can remember off the top of my head. And I like to roll with what's there. If you're creating a character, I like to roll the D8 or D6 or whatever it is, and let it be random. Even if I'm like, no, I don't want that one. Like, that's stinky. I keep it. And because it might not sit with you that day, but it'll sit with you later. So step one, to get flavor, fluff means flavor, means behind the scenes, non-rule based stuff, was the traits and the personality quirks that we should get into Roll20. I pull it up. I stupidly don't have my
I'm looking at it right now. So like what's interesting is, and these are short, right? So
one sentence.
These pre-generated characters had these in there, but the nice thing is if you're creating your own character, there's a list of these things in the player's handbook, right? So there's a personality trait, there's an ideal, there's a bond, and there's a flaw. And there's spots for these. And what's nice is the spots on the characters, these are really short things. These aren't like essays, right? And you shouldn't feel like you need to write an essay. But like, for example, the personality trait of Euphemia and again, Raef was assigned these, they came with his character, was I never have a plan, but I'm great at making things up as I go along. And the best way to get me to do something is to tell me I can't do it. Right. So when you read something like that, Raef, like what goes through your head? Are you like, oh, that's going to be suck, or, ooh, that's neat. Or how do you start to think about that?
I just let them roll over me. I don't, sometimes an immediate thing comes to mind, but I just go, oh, those are cool. I'm going to sit with that. And there'll be events where I'll see an opportunity to make that happen. Like to maybe tip our hat a little bit for an episode that's about to air. You'll notice, Russ, that those personality traits went right into how I dealt with the Green Dragon.
Yes, that's right.
right? So to share behind the curtain, and you'll hear it in the episode, we encountered a green dragon, and the green dragon said, who dares, traipse across my land? And Euphemia's like, she never has a plan. So she just stood up, put her hands in her fist, and says, I, Euphemia Lightfoot, traipse across your land. And then Russ was like, oh God, but that's how you bring your flavor to it. And Seppi, who plays Pyric, he just either decided, or his trait is that he's a coward. His character is a bit cowardice. And so he's protecting the horses. But then, Dan's character cast a spell which emboldened him. So he's like, well, I normally don't do this, but I'm going to act more brave. And so that's how those little one-liners can create. Now, and nobody said, Raef, don't talk to the dragon. They didn't have a chance to. I acted first. But that's another example of no one tells me what to do, because I knew if I would have said, hey, guys, do you think we should have talked to it? They would have been like, no. So then that was the second way that I'm like, I'm going to do that. That's what my character would do.
One of the things that I think is particularly fun about this group is a lot of times in role-playing games, when something like that happens, something unexpected occurs, the players pause, and then out of character, they discuss the best approach, right? And it depends on your play style. That's not right or wrong, by the way.
That's not right or wrong.
How some groups are. So they get into the strategy. Should we try to bluff our way out of this? Should we fight this thing? What do you think the chances are it's going to kill us? And then you always have that one player who's played D&D for a million years going, well, I happen to know the stat block for this thing is, whatever happened. But in this case, what's interesting with this group is you guys very rarely talk out of character, which I think makes it more fun to listen to as a recording, honestly.
Yeah.
But also you just do stuff and then everybody just rolls with it. And there's very little, in this camp. And that's kind of unusual as a DM. You see players spend a moment or two planning things out. And that planning moment is sort of unrealistic, but if you're a very tactical group, that's just part of the fun. Right. But in this group, like, you made a decision, then all of a sudden Seppi made a decision about how to support you in this manner. And then Doc made a decision about how to support Seppi. And a lot of these things are, and what I also like is like when things happen, like the spell effect Embolden, right? That gives you like extra hit points, gives you other stuff, very game mechanic stuff. Nothing in the spell says you should role play your character now with more courage. Like that's not actually in the book, but Seppi just thought to do that, which I thought was awesome, right? Like, so I think the lesson there is like, look for reasons, like look for things to just bring forward your character more, like look for things to, and I love when Seppi does that too, he adds a little twist to it. He says like, I'm feeling, he always does this, like he shares his internal monologue. Like he's like, Pyric is really frustrated that Karluk has made him feel brave, but since he's so brave, here's what he's going to do. So he's almost like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going towards the dragon with a horse, So how did you, is it really just, you go back to these touchstones, or over time, does Euphemia just sort of become a person in your head that you sort of intuit what she would say and do in situations?
A little of both. Let's talk about what's not over time.
Yeah.
Those personality traits and bonds and flaws, those occur to me over time. Here's what's not over time is I decide what I call whether I'm going to play an on-suit character or an off-suit character, which has to do with card references. What do I mean by that? The lore behind halflings, for anybody in the fantasy world, all the way down to hobbits, is that they're what? Diminutive, childlike creatures who are amazingly brave when they need to be. They're good at stealth. They know how to disappear, right? Oh, and they like food and pies and stuff, right? That's the stereotype of a halfling or a hobbit. So I'd say to myself, am I playing a stereotypical hobbit who's good at hiding and likes pies and all sorts of things? Or am I going to play offsuit? And instead, this particular halfling is going to act like a nobleman, knight warrior or something. And that can be really fun, especially if you match your stats to that. So, for example, I have a dwarf female rogue in Greg's campaign. Nobody makes dwarven rogues because the stat block for dwarves is constitution and strength. So you see them as clerics and fighters and rangers. You don't see them as rogues because they're not dex-based. That character is so fun to play because she's not particularly that good necessarily at her dex skills, but boy, is she strong. She gets extra points of damage. And so many times I'll be like, wow, that constitution bonus has totally saved my bacon. Like I'm more hardy. So I like to decide Am I on suit or off suit, both with stats and stereotypes? So for Euphemia, before I even start playing, I decided she's going to be about half and half. She likes the cooking. She likes the pies. She's stealthy, but she's going to be not childlike. She's going to be a lot more emboldened and braved, which you saw with the dragon. And so she's a little bit more, off character type. So, and there's nothing wrong when you're just beginning, like your favorite character. Like I actually recommend this. If you want to be like, you know what, I want to do more of that role playing, not just be dice and fighting. I recommend pick an archetype. Be like Spider-Man. Be like Batman inside your head. Be like Rassilin the Wizard. Like go ahead and just copy that archetype. If you're brand new and you're like, I never know what to think. I never know what to say. I don't know how to do this. That's a really good way. It's just be like Darth Vader. Be like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Be like Luke Skywalker. Whatever archetype of a hero or a villainous creature, personality that you think you can summon. So those are my pre-game tips. And then my third pre-game tip is I call it sometimes like me, sometimes not like me. Is this character going to be an offshoot of Raef? All the things that Raef likes. Does he have the same foods that Raef likes? Does he talk in the same way that Raef does? Does he or she, I'm a business coach by trade now. So like, am I going to be teachery, or am I going to be opposite? So like, I'm a pretty nice person. Am I going to play this character darker? Am I going to let the darker side of Raef out as a chance to explore? So that might mean in a situation like Raef, the real person, would never just kill somebody. This is not going to happen. Is this character going to be like, I'm going to kill that person? They're in my way. They're in the way of my objective. I'm going to kill them. In a weird way, you get to explore your darker side of yourself, actually. I'm always polite in real life. Oh, excuse me, sir. Look out, ma'am. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Is this character going to be not apologetic? I'm very apologetic in real life. Am I going to be not apologetic? So I start to make these decisions of, like I said, like an archetype, not like an archetype, sometimes like me or not like me. And then, of course, you can mix. So those are my pre-game thought processes. And then the last pregame, or sometimes I'll just stop there, and then I'll let the role playing situation come out on its own. Seppi will say something, Doc will say something, John, something will happen that'll be like, ooh, that's an interesting. Like they'll view your character in a way you didn't view it yourself. Like they nominated me leader. I didn't see that coming from a mile away. I didn't see myself as a leader, but now it gives my character a chance to role play leadership, which also fits into her two little ideals, ironically.
Right.
So that's where it comes over time. Allow the character to breathe, change your mind. Like that can help.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. So character evolution is kind of a big part of role playing, right? Not only do your characters level up, but you also have to decide as you go, do I ever evolve my personality? Do I ever evolve my character's beliefs? Is she sort of this one constant that never changes, or does she evolve and change over time and learn things? How do you decide? And has any of that happened yet? You mentioned the leadership thing was sort of thrust upon you. But what other sort of moments in the campaign so far have made you decide, oh, that thing, I think I want to make Euphemia more like that. So I'm going to tweak my perception of her a little differently now to be more like that.
Yeah. Another area that happened was the blueberry crumble episodes. That was one of the things I'm like, she's not going to be the cookie type of halfling. She's not going to have second Z's and third Z's and fifth Z's. I wasn't going to go that direction, but we had so much fun and there was such an opportunity to explore that now I'm like, okay, she's going to be interested in cooking now that she's not just eating auntie's cooking. She has to cook for the group and she's going to take that on. And so
that's interesting. You chose that because you really play up the cooking thing now. And it's, I just assumed from the beginning, you were like, I'm going to play the classic halfling. But it's interesting to me now that you were like, no, I'm not really going to go that route and be so obviously halfling. And
halfling-like.
The rest of the party just sort of thrust that sort of stereotype on you. And instead of like pushing back on it, you're like, this is actually pretty hilarious.
I'm going to embrace it. Yes.
Right.
So that's an example. But I like what you're talking about because one of your character choices could be this character will be rigid in her beliefs.
Yeah.
Like that could be a really cool character. And then it would be really cool would be, do you ever notice like when you watch a TV show, the characters we like the most is when they're their character. We're like, yep, we understand that role, but then there's a change. Like the character that's the jerk cop boss.
Right.
But then they show that softer side. Like, ooh, that gives real depth, So it gives you the opportunity, even if you're rigid, it gives you the opportunity to show softness. Then that's interesting to the other player characters and to the game itself.
That's really interesting.
Some other tips I have, and then Russ, just interrupt me if you've got thoughts, are a lot of people will say, I don't know how to do voices. Okay. Joe and John are amazing at voices. And Seppi has created a voice, but not like Joe and John. Or Craig's really good at voices, You don't have to be good at character voices. Like I'm not that good at it. If you'll notice, I sometimes forget to change the tone to sound like more halfling-like or female-like. But what can help create the mantle of the character being created versus the person is to not use your own name. So instead of saying, hey, Russ, I'm going to pick up my sword and stab the frog. You can say Euphemia will grab her sword and stab the frog. That just by saying your own character's name in the third person and saying the other characters' names. If you just write down like Russ equals this, in the beginning I got Thalric and Ulrich confused constantly,
Right.
So I had to be like Thalric equals John. Is that right? Yeah. So instead of saying, hey, John, blah, 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 I always say Thalric. Just that alone will increase your role-playing prowess by 50%.
Right.
And
I think it's important. And I think it's important as a dungeon master too, to try to remember to use the character names when, it's the character's action, for example. So I'll say like, oh, it's Euphemia has initiative now. I'll try not to say, Raef, it's your turn. I'll try to say, oh, Euphemia gets to go now.
Yes.
And just like when it's on one of the monsters, I'll say, oh, it's the bugbear's turn versus the kobold's turn. I'll say, it's Ulrich's turn. Which can get funny when I'll try to use the correct names and other people use the nicknames like the Cowlick thing. But I think that's a great advice, Raef, because I think you don't have to do voices, right? And that's one of the more intimidating things for some people to be dungeon master is sometimes they feel like you have to have a character persona for every single NPC. But a lot of great DMs simply don't do that. A lot of great DMs just simply are very good at names and descriptions, and they just keep their own voice and their own tone the entire time. So it's almost like they're a narrator, right? So if you think about being a narrator in a book, some narrators do voices. If you listen to audiobooks a lot, but some narrators don't. Some narrators just read, but they just are really good at inflection and they're really good at just saying stuff. So you don't have to do the fancy voices. It's an approach. And if you like to do fancy voices, go for it. But that's not a prerequisite at all to being and I think you hear that in our party particularly because not everybody does the voices.
No, exactly. And that brings me to kind of a second point about role playing is it can be frustrating if one person I really want to role play, but my present group, they're just into hack and slash. I used to think I needed the other 4 members to join in with me. Now this group again is exceptional because everybody's a role player. Right. Most of the time I'm the requisite role player. And I used to think I needed the other 4 to participate. You don't. They can be standing still, hack and slash, no voices, no whatever. You just role play yourself. They usually enjoy it. Sometimes if it's excessive, they get bored if they're hack and slash group. But you can do the role playing, and that'll give them encouragement to try a little. They might try a little voice, or they might try a little action, or you don't need the other 4 people in your group to do it. You can do it yourself. And the GM usually appreciates that, I would say. Along that line, another tip, if again, you're not a character actor with voices like, Craig, Joe, and John, would be to do what Seppi's doing. If you're listening to the show, he's decided it's from the North or North Dakota. He's like, oh, for the Nord. And, so he has a character voicing, but it's not necessarily, he doesn't talk in a language that wouldn't be Seppi's language. So he's not like, I dwarven lass.
Right.
I will.
It's actually a local dialect for his home state.
He just uses.
So it'd be like me adopting a Boston accent and then playing an elf,
right?
Which is easier for some people, right? Because if you know your local region and you know how to do those accents, so he's taking a modern day, a normal real world accent, and then just throwing it on his character to make his character sound a little more unique.
Yes, and maybe talking again like Seppi the person would talk. He's not also trying to create a dwarven dialect in English or something. So that's tip number 2. Tip 3 is I suddenly lost my chain of thought. Oh, it's animating your actions. So if you want to do more role playing in your character, instead of saying when the GM says, Euphemia, it's your turn, instead of saying, okay, I rolled a hit. Okay, you can do that if that's all you want to do. Or 1 level up, okay, I swing my sword. Well, that's better for sure, but maybe try this. Try Euphemia reaches into her scabbard, draws her short sword, and lunges for the belly. Animate it with words, and that can create a visual story. Or one of my skills is that I can move through another person's square. So and by the way, this is what can entertain you a little bit when the rest of the party's going. So instead of checking out and going like, so my turn, I've got 10 more minutes before it's my turn to roll a die, get engaged. Be like, what am I going to do? Like, okay, I know I'm going to move to this square and I'm going to swing my sword. Well, what's it look like? Just dream it out a little bit. So one of my favorite visuals that I created for myself was the scene with the bugbear in the cooking pot. And I can move through somebody's square. So I'm like, Euphemia runs up, jumps off the thigh of, I forget who it was, and, spins underneath the bugbear's legs like you see in the movies and pops out the other side, and swings her.
That was an awesome scene, actually.
Yeah. And sometimes beginning role players might be like, I don't know if I can say that because the GM might be like, you can't spring off his leg or tip. Like I could have said, I spring off the lip of the pot and do a flip and land in the other side. You don't necessarily need the GM's permission as long as it stays within the rule set, which is I can move through the enemy square, which is what I did.
Yeah, well, the crazier you get, like most GMs, the crazier you get, it just means the GM might start injecting tests to see if you screw up. You know? So if you were just like, I'm going to slide through his legs and attack him from behind, well, there's mechanics for all that with your character, right? He or she's already allowed to slide between legs for larger creatures. He's got a bonus for attacking from the back. That's all taken care of. But if you're a different kind of character and you're like, I'm a big, strong fighter, I'm going to push past this orc, and then I'm going to shove him forward into the rest of the party, and then I'm going to bash him with my shield. Well, okay. Well, first make a strength check to get by the orc. If you're not a particularly strong character, that's probably a bad call, you know? Right. But then again, and that's another part, Raef, like how do your stats, we talked about the background, right? We've talked about those little personality traits, but let's talk about the stats themselves, you know, your strength, your dexterity, your charisma, your constitution. Do those stats affect how you role play the character? Like you look at it and go, well, I'm a not very strong halfling, but I'm a very nimble halfling. So I would I'd be more predisposed to do this than that. Does that ever affect how you think?
Yes. Remember when I told you go off suit? Yep. This is where it can be dangerous. So I've learned that even though I like to role play, I still like to be able to hit, and I still like melee combat a lot. I like to be able to hit, and I like to be able to do some damage. So I've learned that if I'm too weak on the stats, or I've created my stats where I'm not going to hit anything and I'm not going to do any damage, I don't have as much fun. Now, Pyric may say, oh, I love it when I have a 4 strength. It creates huge role-playing opportunities.
Well, he's also a spellcaster, though, so he has a different way to affect the battle. Right.
I want to play spellcasters, but I've learned I cannot stand it in reality. So you'll learn. So where the stats come in is what I'm getting at is I don't look at my stat and then role play to it, but I need my stats to back up the vision of my character. Mm-hmm. So yes.
So it's less about the micromanaging of like, wow, it's only a +2 versus a +3, and more just a high level, like she's nimble, she's dexterous, she's not particularly strong. She's very charming and charismatic. She's not particularly wise, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't do that. There's a lot of characters that do who are able to do. She's not that intelligent. She's not that wise. I don't use those stats for that.
The funny thing is you behave that way. Like back to our dragon example. I think most people would say it is not wise for a halfling to stand up arms akimbo and try to talk her way out of being in front of a dragon. but your wisdom is a 10, but your charisma is a 16. And so it actually worked for you because while it wasn't the wisest move, you have the charisma to back up that crazy sort of play. And one presumes in Euphemia's life, she's talked her way out of a lot of tough situations.
Yes.
When maybe the wiser course of action would have simply been to hide or not even be exposed. So,
yes.
So maybe it's a subconscious thing, just kind of knowing what your character can get away with, or
no. And so that's a great question. That's a good way to role play, is to use the stats to say that story like you just did. I didn't. It came off of my ideals and personality traits. Happened to work. So I would have still done that even if my charisma was 10. I just would have hoped that I rolled well. That leads to another role-playing opportunity, though. So when we were picking the archetypes, I went with Inquisitive. Now, the Inquisitive sets gives me lots of really cool, fun role-playing things, but off of one of my worst stats, off of my wisdom stat.
Yes, which is only
so 10. It is a little bit frustrating because I'll fail a lot of those rolls, but it gives me something to look forward to. Am I going to take a stat bump in wisdom? Mm-hmm. Am I going to look for that circlet of wisdom +2, which normally I wouldn't even give a crap about, but now I'm interested in. And so it makes for good choices. I think anytime you have a choice, it can be interesting for your character.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there any part of Euphemia's sort of pre-genness, I guess, that sometimes frustrates you? Are there parts you're like, if I was making this character, I'd done a little differently?
No. That's for two reasons. One, I feel like I've made enough characters that I've picked the stats that I've wanted that I don't need to, like you were kind of saying, I don't need to world build anymore, And number two, I'm not what's called the min-maxer. That is a way to role play, and I don't discern anybody who does it. Min-maxing means the character and all of its abilities maximizes the character's effectiveness. So for example, most thieves pick halflings or elves or anybody that gives a dex bonus because that's their primary stat. So that's an example of maximizing your character. And I do it to some degree. Like my character needs light or finesse weapons to work. Well, guess what? I'm using light or finesse weapons. But it could be a great role-playing opportunity for somebody to be like, I'm going to use a dwarven hammer, which isn't a finesse weapon. You got to be okay with a lot of your abilities not working, but that makes it kind of fun. But I don't. That's where I like to max to some degree. But no, I don't. No, I didn't, because I'm not a min-maxer, so I was like happy. And they were traditional thief. I played long enough to know they were put in traditional thief roles or spots, so I knew that I could do what I wanted, which just comes with experience. I have one more tip. If you have more. The last tip I have is an old acting trick I learned. So I actually took a lot of theater courses in college. And I took like introduction to theater, then acting one or something. And then in one of my acting classes, I learned that acting is a lot harder than it seems. Like when you see these people acting and they're good at it, it's because they're really good at it and they've practiced. It can be hard as you role play to play a role. Well, one of the exercises our theater teacher had us do was like, hey, take your character in the play home, and to help give that character 3 dimensions, life. Think of things like, what's your character's favorite meal? What's their favorite holiday? Who's their father? Now, this isn't in the script of acting, right? You just make it up. What's your father's name? What's your father like? What's your mother's name? Is your mother alive? Do you have a brother? Like you give all of these, what's the favorite dessert? And that can help flesh the character out into 3 more dimensions. So I do that with my D&D characters. I didn't do it night 1. I just did it last week, actually. I didn't know who her mother was or her father. I didn't know. But since we played and I'm getting into feeling who she is, I created her favorite dinner, which is an example of what's like me. One of my favorite meals of all times is an Italian meal called braciolettes. And braciolettes are, you take beef fillet and you slice it really thin, and then you pound it really thin, and then you roll it with breadcrumbs and butter and usually Crisco, but in Italian seasonings, and you roll them up into these little tubes, and you stick little toothpicks in them, and you broil them. And they're just these super tender meats. And it was such a joy when my grandmother and mother would make these for me because they take a lot of freaking effort. Like it takes forever to make these damn braciolettes. So it was like an Italian thing of love. So I decided I'm going to make Euphemia like braciolettes, that's a like Raef thing. And then she named them Hobbit fingers. like her family calls them hobbit fingers, so it's just stuff like that. And that came out from doing this exercise of what's Euphemia's favorite meal.
Great. I think it's really cool. And I like the idea of getting the little extra details and fleshing the character out. And I think that's a great tip. And a good tip for DMs too. Like, don't over design your world. Don't over design your character in the beginning. Like, let the character evolve as you play it. Let the world evolve as you live in it. And then add this stuff as you go. Right. So it's sort of like you find it as you go along. Think about, most of us have played video games now. Think about video games, keep everything very simple in the beginning and they add complexity. The skill trees grow more and more, you get more decisions later. So let yourself have those decisions too. So what's been sort of I want to ask you two questions about working with this group in particular, because I think a lot of role playing as a player depends on a couple things. One, your own experience and how you like to build your character. It also depends upon the dungeon master and how you interact with them. But then also it depends on the other players, on their style and on their approach to your character and their assumptions about your character. What has been one of the easiest things about working with this group, and what has been one of the more challenging things about working with this group?
Okay. The easiest thing has been the minute Seppi and I started to have extended conversations about the cart, the oxen cart or something like that. And the minute that Seppi, I hid in the woods and then Dave wasn't paying attention, Dave's character, and he was like, oh, Seppi does this. And Seppi's like, what are you talking about? Like, he helped the story of pretending I was in the cart when I was really in the woods to trick the guards. I knew then that I'm like, oh, I'm in the big leagues. I'm in the big role-playing big leagues now. I'm going to have freedom to say crazy things that are in character, but to really maybe talk a half hour of game time over a non-combat event. Most of the people that I've played with in the past, and I'm not criticizing, it's just how they prefer to play. It'll kind of get to like after 5 minutes of role playing. All right. Like, so, we're in the bar and we got to get information. I might want to I'm always just fascinated to be like, what's the bartender doing? Does the bartender have a daughter? Is there one fireplace or two? Like, what's the main meal? What's the dessert? And I don't know. It's just curious to me. And most of the time, all right, Raef, that's enough role playing. And then the other characters, they want to just move the story along. They want to get to the fighting and the things that they enjoy. So the beautiful thing was once Seppi sort of got into that, and this was back when it was Craig and Terrace and Dave. And Dave will tolerate it to some degree, but then, oh my God, when we added Doc, who I forgot, he also loves role playing. And when we added Joe and John, I was like, this is the dream team. Oh, and mixed with you, where you're like, if they want to role play for 45 minutes about the horses, I think that's fantastic. You weren't like, let's move this along. So that was really enjoyable, and it makes it easy to, it's kind of like when you hear, like, I'm watching The Office again on Netflix, and then listening to the Office Ladies podcast, and you hear how they began to evolve and grow and get comfortable with their characters, and then improvising with each other and stuff like that. It's reminding me of what that is like when you get this dream team of player characters. It just really makes for a vibrant scenario.
So what's been hard?
So what's been a challenge? This is going to sound really like a lie, but I can't think of one. I guess it would be, maybe I worry as a player character, is everybody getting their time to shine? Doc is a much more quieter person just in general. And I think he's totally okay with it. But sometimes I'm like, are Seppi and I windbagging too much and not giving him a chance to do or say something? Or, Joe and John, or like, last night happened a little bit, like Seppi waited very patiently to do his thing. And then Joe kind of jumped in and took over the narrative, which your brother picked up on and said, but that made me start to get kind of nervous. Yeah. So I was like, oh no, Seppi didn't get his chance. And in the beginning, Seppi wondered, like, Jesus, am I taking up too much airtime? Right. So this is a good tip for DMs. And we haven't had to do this yet because each of us are comfortable, but sometimes giving initiative in a non-combat scenario ensures that everybody gets a chance to have something to say in the bar encounter.
Yep. And I've done that sometimes when the players do start talking over each other. I'll go to initiative step, or I want to actually set initiative up, but I'll say, okay, hang on, everybody's talking at once. Raef, what would you like to do? Seppi, what would you like to do? I think that is a challenge when you have very strong personalities, which we do. We have everybody's just amazing, and I have noticed about that. And that's one of the tips that DMs like to make sure that a good DM wants to see every character have a chance periodically, if not once per session, then once every other session. Have that moment, whatever it is. It's that moment that they get to kill the boss, or that moment they get to have a really impactful impact, or that moment that everybody just laughs because they did a good job. So you want to have that moment. I think Karlik did have it the prior session where he slept the horses, because I thought that was a really smart move and very clever. And I'm starting to get the feeling that that's more Doc's style, but also Doc does put a lot of time into the rhymes. And he usually has them ready at certain times. So I think that's great too. But I think that is important. And what's kind of good about this group I've noticed is that they do seem to catch when that happens a little bit, because people get excited, right? And they kind of back up and help each other out. So I think it's a good tip in general for players, because the DM will try to do that. But of course, the DM can also be distracted. And a lot of times, the thing you remember about Dungeon Masters, in the back of their mind, they're running all the other stuff constantly. So they can't always see everything they'd like to help with. But if you're as a player, always feel free, I think, to jump in and assist another player. If you realize that person's turn got skipped, or they just, maybe meant to say more, or they weren't finished going, or whatever, because sometimes that does happen.
That's another good little role-playing segue too, which is if you have a little bit quieter members, don't be afraid to say, I might say, hey, Karlik, I'm the thief. I'm going to lockpick the door. Hey, Karlik, give me a hand with this door. Right. Throw them a bone to re-engage them and to go, oh yeah. And
right.
Hey, what do you think we should do? And then he does something. And you're right. Our group's really good. If he's like, Karlik opens the door, I'm like, I wasn't expecting that. But we don't say, no, that's not what I meant. We just go with it.
Right.
It was really good when John, caught Joe sort of getting excited and stepping on Seppi's turn to ask questions. John's like, hey, Ulrich, your shoe's untied. Pirate, go. He did it in character.
Right.
That's advanced. I mean, I gotta, I don't know that most of you listening to this are gonna be able to pull that off. But one of our friends, Dave, who played in the beginning of this, I don't know if they were recorded or not. Dave's really good at throwing the line to another player to engage them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say when you get tossed a line, take the floor a little bit. Don't be like, nah, I passed. Just come up with something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. Just kind of wing it. Awesome. So where do you think this is going to go? I mean, do you envision like 20th level Euphemia someday? Or do you think you're going to get tired of her? So how are you going to, so I'm asking is, how do you, if you kind of feel like, okay, this is going, this could be a character that I have to live with and get to know for a long period of time. How do you prevent yourself from getting bored of Euphemia? What do you envision yourself doing? Like in some of their longer campaigns in the past, what are some tips you've done in the past to kind of keep your character fresh?
For me, it's death. To me, death of a role-playing character is huge. But these characters live in my mind. She's a bit of it's as if I'm reading a graphic novel about Batman. And so the fact that she can die, this beloved character that I'm breathing love to and life to, can die, keeps it always fresh, because I don't know. The minute I know, Euphemia is beloved and she'll never die, now it's boring, because now I can just walk up to a green dragon and I don't know I'm going to get eaten. So I didn't know that I was doing anything that bold. I literally thought that was the druid and we were to commune with this thing. And when everybody panicked, I went, uh-oh, like this could go bad.
Oh, so you thought, this is a spoiler. I almost feel like we can't air this now until after the dragon episode.
That's fine. We can do that.
But let's do that. But what's funny about that, we should do that, right? Because I think that'd be good. But what's funny about that, so I didn't know this about this, Raef. So you thought, so what was going through your mind? Let's walk through this now. What was going through your mind as a player? Because you did point out, I mean, what's interesting about that particular time period, because this is a good question. Like, as a player, when do you decide to do something like that? Did you expect DM's grace there? Or did you, because I had a conversation with the whole party, the session before, saying the training wheels are off. anything can happen now. You've been playing a while, right? Saying basically your characters can now die, right? And we could have a whole total party wipe if we do. And if we're having fun, we'll make up a new campaign, but that could happen, right? So, and what's funny about this, Raef, is you reminded the party of that. We were doing the recap at the start, and I hadn't thought to mention it again. No one had brought it up. And then you're like, and you're like, and one more thing. You're like Columbo, one more thing. The DM mentioned that we could all die now. So that's a thing. And then this dragon shows up, and you stand there bravely. Now, what's going through your head as a player? Are you like, this is what my character would do? I might die. Were you like, no, I'm certain I'm reading this correctly, and it's not
That's
really
how
a
I felt.
dragon? Like, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that's how I felt the second thing. So I had missed the part that you reminded the group that John's thunder wave boom was miles wide, and that tracks monsters.
That was my version of the DM saying, are you sure you want to do this? This was me saying, like, because I did do a moment in the episode 2 where it's like, hey, you know what's interesting is look at how big the thunder wave noise was, because there's actually literally a sentence in the rule book that the thunder wave is 300 feet. And the guys are measuring it on the screen, and you can clearly see it's bigger than the entire map, only about a quarter of which you've explored, right?
Right. Totally forgot all about that. So we were dwindling down the sort of pawns, the stick creatures and then thing, and we hadn't met the main character yet. So I thought the dragon was the next main NPC. And I'm saying to myself, well, we're obviously too weak to kill it. We just sort of know that from player knowledge. So this must be a chance to talk and parlay and create a deal or something like that. And so she did her brave move. And then when you went, I did not expect that. I was like, oh no, I guess that's not what quote was supposed to happen there. But game tip here, what I liked about it is you didn't just kill the party or kill Euphemia. You rolled with it, and you gave me the opportunity to use my skills. I can hide, I can stealth. People reminded me of my inspiration to help with hiding. So I don't like capricious killing. I don't like, you made a mistake, your character's dead. I don't like that. But I do, if it was like, oh my God, I rolled 2 1s. Crap, now I'm in the open, and it says in the rule book, it'll take the closest character with the breath weapon, and all of a sudden it's like a double the hit points. I wouldn't even like that if I'm dead. It would be more like, all right, make a death save, and but if I fail 3 and I'm dead, it's like, what's the GM gonna do? That's what I mean by being.
Well, what kind of worked out in that scenario was you did roll a nat 20 to persuade the dragon that you were here to do him a favor. So that really helped you a lot. I mean, if you rolled a natural 1 there, that would have been a very different scene. Using your inspiration there was pretty smart. But then also what worked out was the rest of the party started to back up the play. And I thought, well, if he rolls a natural 20, this might actually be something you can do. And then the other part of my head was thinking, like, what would the druid be doing when all this was happening? So anyway, but that was, so we'll let you, the listener, hopefully listen to that episode and kind of know what happened after that. But I just thought that was really interesting because, how do you draw the line between taking an unnecessary risk, like you know what I mean? Like you don't really want to expect the DMs, and I don't think you did, but you don't really want to expect the DMs going to save you and you can do anything. So how do you know where to draw the line between like being bold and doing a couple things that are a little bit on the edge versus like, I'm going to die here?
I dipped my toe in. So I didn't charge the dragon. I didn't put the dragon / the GM in a corner to be where like the dragon's going to eat me, and its jaws are going to chop me in half. Part of it's player experience. Like we knew if that was a giant rat, we could do what the frick we want. We know when it's a dragon, we just know from player experience, unless it's weakened or something, that's a pretty serious foe for 3rd level. So some of it comes with experience, but let's say that it's a demon, and I have no idea if it's a strong demon or a weak demon. I dip my toe into the experiment with what my idea is. And so if I want to combat it, I don't just charge in. I might be like, get prepared for combat and then see if Seppi's going to talk us out of this and go, oh, this is a talking encounter. Oh, nope, this is a fighting encounter. Or that's one of the things I like about this campaign is a lot of encounters end up just being fighty. But I think that like you did that, the necromancer guy with the tent and the thing, like that was more to me a talking encounter. We turned it into a fighting one,
right? But
it had the opportunity to be a talking encounter, and I thought that was really cool. So I guess I probe. I give I give my character a way out to escape if it's too big of a thing. And also, I went first, so it lets the other characters be like, Euphemia, I know dragons. Like, Seppi doesn't knowledge roll. It's a demon. He goes, this is a really high level demon. I could be like, oops, I haven't overcommitted, that kind of thing. But I had forgotten you said it could be a random monster, so I thought it was the next encounter. That's why that happened.
Interesting. Great. Yes. So, awesome, Raef. Any other tips? What's the biggest thing you've learned? So you've mentioned that a lot of your experience playing D&D you brought to bear on how you think about Euphemia and how you've been rolling with her and how you've been playing. Or has there been anything you've learned from this particular campaign? Anything that's a new sort of way to think about either D&D or role playing or anything else?
I don't know if I can't think of maybe anything from this specific encounter, but I guess I would say over the years, what I've learned is if you want to role play and then try it, and then you kind of run out of ideas, let the other people breathe a little and they'll add concepts to you that you can then role play with, or the GM can. So that's what I've learned, is that it is like an improv theater with 5 other people. Like, you can rely on other people, and you can do that by giving too. So role playing can be created when you just create this narrative. So like you decide that, like, one of the things I like to do, which I learned from Doc, is I just open doors. I just pick, instead of like listening and just like I open the door, and that creates opportunity for the other characters to be like, before Euphemia can open the door, I'm going to listen. And so sometimes just putting it out there lets the other characters come up with their concept of what they want to do.
That's great.
Or that the GM wants to do from that.
I think another thing you went in there when you said helping, I thought of this too. One of the things that can be really effective as a player is you don't always have to be the character that is doing the damage or hitting the creature or even talking your way out of the situation. Help the other characters, right? So a lot of times, first of all, it can be very enjoyable to look at your other abilities and your other stats and assist either in a skill roll or by enhancing them with a spell. And I think we've seen this quite a few times in our campaign, right, where the players are doing things to help each other. And that creates 2 things. One, it helps you succeed as a group. But the other thing that ends up happening is it creates interesting bonds in the party, right? And so out of happenstance, all of a sudden, certain characters seem to be helping each other more than others. And all of a sudden, certain characters become closer than others. And you have Pyric like ranking the dwarf brothers, So things like that happen, and it creates some really creates personality traits. It creates memories. It creates interesting events. But really all you're doing is, technically you're just buffing other people. But I think it adds a lot of character to the game. And it's also an opportunity for you to play off of that. So, and I think we see it a lot. So I think it's one of the things a lot of fun about this particular group.
Super fun. And that's something else that I think is a super good point, especially if you're a medium to advanced role player or player, which is I've learned that I like to be the driver type of character. I always want to be like a Doc and a Seppi, who are the support characters, but I wouldn't have thought to do any of the things that Seppi and Doc would do. And I end up not having fun because I don't think of the way to support. So I've learned, like, my character, by having high initiative and high dex and the ability to fight, can often start and instigate matters. What I've learned as a person is to not always hog the show. So to sometimes be like, yeah, I've got the super high initiative. You know what? I'm going to hold. What can Pyric do first? That kind of thing. Or I'm not going to open this door. I'm not going to, I'll pick the lock if they ask me, but I'll be like, let someone else take the lead. Like, I've learned just as a player character to, if your character always ends up in the forefront, take the back seat. And that be gracious. And that enables the other person to do what their thing that they're special at. Oh,
great tip. Yes, go ahead.
If somebody is special at a thing, let them do the thing. So like if Pyric's all about knowledge and history, well, let's say I'm super good at knowledge too, but that's his thing. Let him do his thing. My thing can be this, or I can aid, or that type of thing. So let the other characters breathe, I would say.
Excellent. Well, Raef, thanks for the time today. I think that was excellent.
Yeah, that was fun.
I learned a lot about how you think about Euphemia. So that's fantastic.
And
so what's
by the way,
the next? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to get to that. So next we want to do Russ again with GM basics. Because we realized that our GM talk was maybe a little too high level. We want to create an episode where if you're brand new to Dungeons and Dragons, you can, which is how I want this character to be, and for experience. But if you're a brand new GM, we want you to be able to run a campaign, and Russ and I will go through that.
Yep.
And then we also want to do, I got a bunch of people on Twitter that said, I don't really know how to do Roll20. So I thought a Roll20 tutorial. And then I want to do it in pairs because it'll give the players, I want Pyric and Doc to come on, talk about how they make their characters, Joe and John to come on. Now they all said, let's do all four of us, which maybe when, Russ too, but then so anyway, I want to hear from the other characters and how they make their characters. And off the air, I want to say this on the air and off the air. On the air, I want to say, another player tip is I create what I call a backdoor for myself. I wrote up a little paragraph. Russ may have seen it yet. I'm not going to tell the other characters this. It's a secret from them. But there's a character hook in there. Should Euphemia meet her demise, I have a thread to sort of keep the story going. Okay. I always create a backdoor for myself, so to speak. So that way I'm not like, oh my God, now what am I going to do?
Don't say it. We're still on the air. Don't say what it is.
No. I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you off the air. But as a player tip, I often like to do that in the backstory.
But here's the secret I do want you to share before we sign off here, which is what is the next baked good Euphemia is going to make? But just tell us here, so only the people who listen to this episode know this.
I was thinking along the lines
because you're pretty good at sharing like the actual ingredients and all the different sides that are going on a different meal. So it could be the next baked good or meal, next big cooking project.
No, the baked good I was thinking was a good peach cobbler with like a homemade, homemade vanilla bean ice cream.
I was going to ask you, is it going to have more of a cinnamon situation, a little more vanilla? Do you put it's going to be brandy in there? How does that
creamy? Work? Creamy is I want that creamy, savory flavoring.
I feel like there could be another episode we do on Euphemia's cookbook.
You know what? We should do that. We should create Euphemia's cookbook.
We should do.
There could be Hobbit fingers in there.
Between the sessions in an episode, we should do like a little Euphemia's recipe for the week.
Oh, I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll do that.
All right, think about that.
I'll find my best blueberry crumble recipe so far.
Wait, the blueberry crumble's like the patented, that's
we'll put Hobbit fingers in there so far.
And the trick to the crumble is it's not a blueberry, turnover.
No.
It's not a blueberry cobbler.
No.
It's not a blueberry pie.
No.
It's a blueberry crumble.
Right.
It's not a blueberry square. No.
Nope.
Don't get confused. So we definitely have to tell people how to make one of those.
I think I'm gonna have to try to make it first because I've not made blueberry crumble.
Well, there's a cookbook coming. Here's another secret. I got this is later after Christmas. I got my daughter. There's actually an official Dungeons and Dragons cookbook, which I bought for my oldest daughter who's away in college. So I'm gonna give it to her and be like, here, don't starve at school. And she can make D&D foods. Which is
will this get to air before the holidays?
It probably will air before New Year's.
Okay,
maybe, but after Christmas, I think.
One of my favorite things to do is get buy the player's handbook if you haven't. Just read it. Make a character. You might not have a game group. Oh, I don't have a game group to play. Just make a character, because when you make a character, the game group will come to you. If you build it, they will come. So awesome. I bought, I think, Xanthar's Compendium. Just to
Xanthar's
read.
Guide to
everything.
What is it? Xanthar's Guide to Everything. Yes.
Yeah, I bought that just to read, to flip through hot cocoa, hot cider, or brandy, whatever, just to sit by the fire.
Well, it gives you lots of ideas.
Enjoy the source.
Lots of great art, lots of inspiration, lots of crazy ideas. You almost don't even have to know how the rules work. It's just like, oh, this is a cool thing I would like to put in my character.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Raef. Well, thanks for all the details on Euphemia. And
that's awesome.
We'll be doing more of these Academy episodes. We should call them the Academy series because sometimes they're Player Academy, sometimes they're DM Academy.
We should call them the Academy.
That's what we'll do.
We'll talk off the air, but I'm thinking we can do something with those A's there. Like it could be
the AAA. The
AAA Academy series.
Yeah, the Academy now with more A's. That's right.
Yeah.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.